everybody. Welcome. Let me see, we have some people coming into the waiting room. Hi, Sharon, if you can watch that and let people in so I can focus on the presentation, that would be great. Today we're here to talk about housing and people with disabilities. And before we get started, I'm going to let all of the interpreters explain what is going on, and then we'll begin. So welcome, and I'm excited to see everybody here today.
Thank you so much, Debbie. So at this time, we're going to do the language interpretation introduction. And yeah, and I'll start with Spanish. Gracias. Buenos días, mi nombre es Flavia, estoy trabajando con mis colegas Debbie y Natasha Camilo hoy día y vamos a ofrecer interpretación para mantener el compromiso de justicia lingüística de esta organización. En estos momentos, si ustedes quieren escuchar esto en español, por favor vayan a la pantalla y vean que dice interpretación de idiomas y opriman ahí y pueden escoger entre criollo haitiano, español o inglés. Si ustedes están en una celular o en una tablet, se ven un poquitito distintos. Toquen su pantalla, vean abajo a la derecha, opriman los tres puntitos que dice más o more, y luego opriman interpretación de idiomas y luego escojan. Y luego toquen Done arriba a la derecha. También estamos trabajando con nuestros colegas Leilani y su otro colega, y vamos a ofrecer interpretación de lengua de señas americana. Esto es para mantener el compromiso de justicia lingüística. Por favor, recuerden de hablar pausado y hablar de una persona a la vez. Gracias. So in order to establish language justice and this organization's commitment to language justice, this meeting, we will be offering American Sign Language. We will also be offering Haitian Creole live interpretation and Spanish interpretation. If you would like to access the live language interpretation into Spanish or Haitian Creole, take a look at your screen, and then at the bottom where you have all the different options, click where it says language interpretation, and then you can choose between Haitian Creole, Spanish, or English. If you are connecting from a cell phone, this looks slightly different. Grab your phone or your tablet, touch your screen, and then look at the bottom right. There's three dots that say more. Click on that, and then click on language interpretation, and you can choose among the Spanish, Haitian Creole, or English. Finally, when you're done, click Done at the top right, and you will be connected in the right channel. Now, if you do not understand Haitian Creole or Spanish, in case anybody wants to speak in Haitian Creole or Spanish, I ask you that you please at this time jump into the English language. That way, if anyone were to say anything in Spanish or Haitian Creole, you will be able to hear the live interpretation. If you run into any issues, let us know. We'll be in the chat. Thank you so much. I'll pass it on to Natasha, or like our Haitian Creole team at this time. Thank you.
Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Nous n'avons espace côté nous respecter langage avec justice linguistique et nous bien contents pour tout le monde qui a parlé et puis communiquer dans la langue que vous plus confortable. Donc, si vous voulez utiliser fonction pour interprétation et sur un computer, vous pouvez regarder en bas écran, ou après un globe terrestre. Là, vous cliquez sur lui, ou après choix langage. Donc, vous choisissez si vous voulez espagnol, si vous voulez créole haïtien, ou bien si vous voulez tendre et puis communiquer en anglais. Là, vous choisissez, vous cliquez sur Mute Original Audio. Là, ça, vous ne pouvez pas entendre des bruits de fond, vous ne pouvez pas entendre des gens qui parlent, ou juste entendre des interprétations. Si c'est son téléphone ou bien son tablette que vous avez, vous regardez en bas à droite écran et puis vous avez trois petits points. Trois petits points ça y est, vous cliquez sur eux et puis même bagalan, vous avez choix langue que vous gagnez, que vous utilisez pour communiquer ou bien pour tendre rencontre ça. Là, vous cliquez sur lui, cliquez Mute Original Audio encore pour pas entendre des bruits de fond. Et puis c'est pour cliquer Done pour arrêter dans la chambre côté que vous choisissez. Si vous voulez tendre ou pas comprendre espagnol ou bien ou pas comprendre en créole, pas quoi ça t'est arrivé, but vous avez choisi anglais pour que vous attendez interprète le cap parler. Et si vous pas attendez, nous avons un monde qui là qui a fait un langage des signes américains et puis non lycée Nélanie, et puis après sous écran, et puis c'est lui-même qui a fait un langage par signe américain. Merci, bonne rencontre.
Thank you. We will also, besides Spanish and Haitian Creole, we will also have American Sign Language interpreters. 2 will be rotating throughout the presentation, and there is also captions, and you can either turn the captions on and they'll appear on the bottom of your screen, or we've put a link in the chat if you want the URL to find the captions. So welcome, and we are now going to get started. We take effective communication very seriously. So in order for this to work as efficiently as possible, we ask everybody to turn off their cameras unless you need to see or communicate with the American Sign Language interpreters. And I will be turning off my camera also. We will turn them on again at the end of the presentation, but just to be respectful of what makes it easiest for the interpreters, we're going to turn off the videos. So thank you for that. This is one or the first of 3 trainings that we're going to be doing this year in our Enable Project training series. The first one today is on housing. The second one will be in a month on April 11th, and we're going to look at the intersection of disability and abuse. This will be the 3rd year that we're going to talk about this topic, and we're going to delve deeper into it and specifically look at gun violence and animal abuse and how that relates or is an indicator of domestic violence. And then our 3rd training will be May 23rd. And we're going to look at technology, effective communication, and how people that call information lines get access to information, whether that be our Miami-Dade 311 line or 911, or other systems where you go through a phone and have to press lots of buttons in order to actually get information. And we're going to talk about what that looks like for people with disabilities. So 3 really interesting topics, and going beyond the introductory trainings that we've done over the last 2 years and really into nuts and bolts and practical implications of what all of these topics mean to people with disabilities. This project is sponsored by the Enable Project. Well, this is the Enable Project. It's sponsored by the Ford Foundation, and you can see our grant language on the screen. But before we begin today, I want to explain to you the rest of the accessibility features that we're using today for this presentation. As you've already heard, we take language equity very seriously. And we just discussed all the different forms of language equity that you're going to hear. But I also want you to notice that on my slides, you're going to see that the top right-hand part of the slide is blank, and that the bottoms of the slides are blank. And this is intentional. It's not like I just kind of threw things on the slides and they look uneven. This was done on purpose because after we finish today and we have the recordings, we're going to embed the sign language interpreters into the top right-hand corner of the slides. And we're going to embed the captioning into the bottom of the slides, so that when we turn it into a YouTube video for someone to watch after today, all of that accessibility will be in the final product that we make. So it is intentional. If you're not used to seeing it, it might look a little odd today, but by the 3rd training, you'll be very used to how we've decided to set up these slides. Also this year, we're adding a new feature of accessibility. We've invited Chaplain Besa Buell to guide us in mindfulness activities at the beginning of the training and in the middle of the training. And she's going to start by centering us, and then she's going to make sure that we don't get off track, because all of this information we're talking about could be very triggering for people. And we will also have, or we have created a breakout room and a licensed counselor is on this training and in the meeting, and in case any information we share with you today triggers you or upsets you and you want to talk about it, we have the ability. Sharon is the person who's following the chat. If you want to talk to our counselor or Besa, put something in the chat and Sharon will put you in the breakout room. And right now in real time, you can talk to someone about it if anything you hear is triggering. So very accessible, very unique way to present our topic today. So now let's begin. We're going to start, as I said, with Besa. Besa, I'm going to let you take over from here and do what you do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Deborah. And thank you to everyone that's made this possible. So hello, everyone. I'm your embodiment facilitator today. My name is Besa Bouil. I'm an endorsed humanist chaplain and a diversity, equity, and inclusion educator. I'm also spiritual director and community minister, providing decolonized trauma and emotional support through my organization. On the slide, you can see my contact information is chaplainbesa@grayteakettle.com and my website. So today we're going to engage in practices to gather our attention and focus. So what becomes activated is the premotor cortex as we ground ourselves in compassionate embodiment. We are coming from a place that is about great kindness and care with the aspiration to benefit others, and that we are in alignment with our character. It is important as a chaplain to create a container of safe space, because during our program, you may find yourself triggered because we each come from different situations, trauma, and experiences of life. So having this container of safe space is important. And I want you to be aware of what you can expect in our time together. So right now we're going to take a moment to create the sacred space. This will be a safe place. This will be a sacred and holy place, a place without time, a place where we are all welcome, feel seen, heard, and supported. And so we're going to make an intention. Today, we're going to make an intention that we're going to practice together to witness each other's humanity, stories, and journeys. We open our hearts to be present and open. We understand that this will not instantly remove the pain and trauma we have experienced throughout our lives. However, today, we make an intention to shift so that it will be a soothing balm to reset our souls and community. Now, let us take a moment to reset our nervous system, to be present together. I'd like us to engage in a guided body scan and take a deep cleansing breath and exhale through your mouth. Let's do this 3 times. An inhale through your nose, and exhale through your mouth. Again, an inhale through your nose, and exhale through your mouth. And finally, an inhale through your nose, and an exhale through your mouth. And feel your body in the chair or seat that you are in. Feel your whole body in this space. If you feel dizzy or you feel sensations in your body, that's your body talking to you. So be gentle with yourself. Feel the ground or whatever surface that is at your feet, just so you're connecting with your body. And reflect for 1 minute and observe what has come up for you. It could be a physical sensation. It could be an emotion, a thought, a memory. still breathing while we are noticing what is happening inside of our bodies. And now that we have noticed, we focus back into the space of this community, of this workshop, and we are back in the space again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Besa. So our speakers today, my name is Debbie Dietz, and I am the Executive Director of Disability Independence Group. DIG is a nonprofit advocacy center for disability rights, and our mission is to expand opportunities for participation, education, employment, and acceptance of persons with disabilities through advocacy, litigation, education, and training. You're also going to hear from Fred Christian. Fred is an outstanding disability advocate. And then we're going to hear from Zaina from the Miami Workers Center. She's going to talk to us about the state of housing in Miami and a project that her organization is working on called the Tenant Bill of Rights. And then we're going to talk to Janice from Urban Health Partnership, and she's going to talk to us about age-friendly communities and what it means to age in place. Then I'm going to come back, wrap it all up, introduce you to all of the Enable Project partners, and then give you some calendar of events of things that are coming up that you might find interesting. So let me get everybody started. If you watched our trainings last year, we did a training on housing, and I did the training with a gentleman named Rob Collins from Hope Inc. And Hope Inc. is our local fair housing agency. And in that training, Rob and I discussed the Fair Housing Act, the laws around housing discrimination, and ways that people could report discrimination. And we talked about how 50% of all claims filed with HUD were disability discrimination, which a lot of people didn't know. This year, though, I wanted to go beyond the laws and the rules and the requirements and talk about what it looks like and feels like to be a person with a disability that lives in the community. And what does this actually mean? Today, we're going to go beyond the words, beyond the law, and discuss the state of housing in our community. And one of the main purposes, or one of the ways that is done is through the law of the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. And one of the goals of that law was to ensure that people with disabilities have full and complete participation in all areas of community living, and housing is a major component of community living. Where do you live? Where is your house within the community? When Congress was passing the ADA, it found that there was unfair and unnecessary discrimination and prejudice towards people with disabilities, and that people could not compete on an equal basis or pursue opportunities like people without disabilities. And that ultimately it cost the government billions of dollars in unnecessary expenses and resulted in people being dependent and not productive. So the ADA had something called an integration mandate, and it was fundamental to the ADA. Congress made it clear that a national mandate, which they called the integration mandate, for the elimination of discrimination against people with disabilities. And when Janice talks to you today, she's going to show you how her organization uses funds from the government to make sure that that integration mandate is being met in our community. Now, I'd like to introduce you to Fred. Fred is going to tell you about his experiences as both a person with a disability and as a caregiver to his father, who is also a person with a disability. He's going to tell you from his perspective what is going on in our community, what we're doing a good job at, and what we need to still work on. So Fred, I welcome you to take over and tell us about what's going on.
Thank you, Debbie. I want to introduce myself briefly. My name is Fred Christian. I am a disabled community advocate. I have a social media organization called Impact, which advocates on housing, healthcare, and also against gun violence in the communities. And I'm going to speak on these 2 or 3 of these topics today with this little presentation I prepared. And I'm grateful to be here. And so let me get started. Okay. One of the problems that we face as disabled persons, and we have this in common with elderly persons, is affordability. Miami-Dade, Broward County, Palm Beach County are among probably, and Orange County are probably among 3 of the worst in the state of Florida for this nationally. Our rents average probably between $1,800 to $2,200, maybe $2,500. Most working people and absolutely most retired / disabled persons, especially persons with disabilities, cannot and are struggling to afford this right now. So we have got to tackle this problem or we're going to have a bad problem with it. So that's one of my key points I wanted to make today, that all communities must be affordable. My second key point is, and I'm going to change around my presentation because I remembered something. I want to talk about the 3 C's of bad buildings. Okay. In Surfside last year, we had the unfortunate collapse of the Champlain Towers, which was a 40-year-old building that was poorly maintained, that was suffering so many things, either climatologically or structurally, that were causing this. But one thing we did find out from this was that Champlain Towers was renting out Airbnbs. They were renting out the units, and they did not have knowledge of all the people that were occupied in that building. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to just quit. I thought of this yesterday. I'm going to ask you a scenario. What do we do if, God forbid, we have a person that's blind, deaf, or in a chair in one of those buildings, in one of those apartments? What do? We have to be able to rescue that person properly. We cannot let them sit there in rubble or underneath rubble. We need to know who that person is, where they're at, so we can get them services too immediately if they are in danger or in peril, or members of their family are in peril. Second portion of the 3 C's is right after Champlain collapsed, there was a building in North Miami Beach, Florida called Crestview Towers. Crestview Towers is still standing. However, it was evacuated one day by the police department and the city government, and I found this out by news reports. I was not physically there. I want to just tell that, but I saw this on the news and followed this closely. This building was evacuated at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday night. The people that were residents, and I'm not sure if there were any persons with disabilities in there, but potentially there could have been. These people were told they had 5 minutes to pack their belongings and get out of the building for fear of collapse. They took them to the Miami-Dade County Fairgrounds. Now, question 1.
Fred?
If you have,
Fred?
Yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Would you mind slowing down for interpretation?
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm a little up for
It's
this.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Now, so back to my point. Okay. Okay, back to the Crest. Okay. So we go to Crestview Towers in North Miami Beach again. And my question to you is this. If we have a person that's in a chair or blind or deaf or autistic, are they going to be able to adapt to go into a fairground situation at the drop of a hat? Many with intellectual, i.e. autistic spectrum disorders, myself included, don't always adjust well. There can be psychological trauma from this potentially. So we have to have a plan in place for folks like this in apartments, condos, etc., where when we do an evacuation, the persons with disabilities are going to a safe space like we're providing today for people. In other words, this is going to be a transition. Most regular, average working people, it's traumatic for them. 5 minutes to get your stuff and go, and then you're on a bus or in your car to a fairgrounds. You're going from the comfort of your own homes to a strange setting. For a person with disabilities, that's not a great idea. We need to make sure with the counties and the cities that we are giving them a hotel to at least be a safe space, providing mental health, etc., for these people that are going to need it. And finally, the third one, which is the key premise of my presentation on the 3 C's. Civic Towers, Alapata, City of Miami, Florida. A building built in the 1970s that was nearly condemned approximately 3 months ago because of rotting garbage in the hallways and in the trash rooms, roach infestations, rat infestations, and 2 failed elevators. It was to the point at one point on a Tuesday during this building's problems, the elevators were out. One of the elderly / disabled persons in the building had a medical issue. They had to evacuate this person via the ladder or bucket truck. Now, I will tell a personal story with this. 3 years ago, my father and I relocated from South Florida to St. Petersburg, Florida. We had to live in a high rise. My father had severe illnesses during this time, which I had to take care of as a caregiver. And to make a long story short, I asked the firemen one day when they responded, okay, if there's a fire or something happens and the elevator malfunctions, how are you going to get him out of there? Because he's wheelchair confined. They said, we have 3 options. Fireman carry, which for a disabled person is very painful. That would involve approximately 1 to 4 firefighters taking each limb and possibly someone supporting you under the back, carrying you legs and hands by hand down the steps. Second option would be sliding you by a backboard. Third option would be putting you on what they call the Stokes or litter and lowering you into the basket, then lowering you onto the ground. We need to do better for our persons with disabilities and keeping them in safe spaces. We need to put more of them on ground floor or second floor or third floor level apartments. This way we do not have potential traumas with this. And also, we're encountering a lot of things with this too, besides the fire department and rescue angle. People should not be living in filth, be they disabled or not. There's no reason for a person just because they're disabled or poor or elderly to have to walk out of their house and have a roach infestation or have garbage laying in the hallways, laying in the trash rooms for people or on the streets. We deserve clean communities and we also deserve safe communities because unfortunately in South Florida, we've had a wave of gun violence, which I advocate for. And our community of disabled persons, blind persons, autistic persons are high risk. We should be safe going to malls, theaters, churches, mosques, synagogues, public parks, arenas, wherever we choose to go, supermarkets, Walmart, etc. We should be safe where we're going. We should not have to live in fear, especially given the incident that happened last week in Broward County on a public bus. Thank goodness that driver had the presence of mind to take the bus to the police headquarters because persons with disability are in peril even on public transit these days. So we need to be mindful of our community as a whole, that it has to be safe. In other words, we deserve safety. We should be allowed to walk outside of our house, sit on our porches in our chairs, roll in our chairs, and be safe from gunfire. And I just want to thank you guys today because I'm pretty much covered what I wanted to cover, like I said, with the crime and everything. And I just want to thank you guys for this opportunity and blessing. And also the plumbing must be in working order in the buildings too, and also air conditioners too. So we reserve well-maintained buildings, communities that are safe and physically safe. And I want to thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Fred. It means a lot to hear you talk to us about what you've experienced in your situation. So let me give you a little update on the status of housing. Housing insecurity remains disproportionately high for people with disabilities. There's more than 7 million renters with disabilities that pay more than 30% of their income on rent and therefore more likely to face eviction. And this impacts disabled renters of color even more, and they're more vulnerable to losing their housing. Now, Zaina is going to go into more detail on these statistics and give you more context for you. So I'm actually going to let her take over and start speaking. Zaina, you want to take over?
Leilani, the interpreter, wants to know, could you please allow multi-pin for Leilani? She was kicked out.
Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Yes, Dana, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you to Deborah and to everyone on this call. Thank you for inviting me. I definitely just also want to pay so much respect and admiration for community leaders like Fred. I also see Melissa on this call, folks who have been given their all to the community for many years now. So just really grateful to be here with all of you. And so we can go on to the next slide. So that first slide that y'all see was a picture of one of our members, Keisha, holding a sign at a recent mobilization we had on MLK Day in Liberty City to really bring attention to the housing crisis in Miami, you know, something that we often like to say is there really isn't actually a housing crisis in Miami, because certainly we know there's quite a few empty apartments in high rises and plenty of luxury condos that are left empty while our sisters and brothers have no place to sleep at night, with too many people sleeping in their cars. What we are really seeing is, in many ways, a crisis of protections for renters and our families, and particularly for renters living with disabilities. And so just really want to underscore the importance of the work of organizations like Enable. And certainly at the Miami Workers Center, so many leaders in our membership who are renters are living with disabilities themselves or caring for loved ones with disabilities. And so they really are on the front lines of these struggles here in Miami. And we can move on to the next slide. So what's happening right now across Florida in particular, Florida is seeing some of the most extreme spikes in rental increases in the nation, and especially in Miami. And what many of us on this call are aware of is we are not at the end of the pandemic. You know, so many of us, especially those who have existing conditions and are trying to protect their immune system, are still very much in the heat of the pandemic, a pandemic that has claimed the lives of far too many in our community. And so for us, it's really important that we name that all of these rental increases are certainly coming at the expense of particularly community members that are even more vulnerable, those that have limited options in terms of their employment, also because of discrimination they're experiencing in their employment as well, right? And so we can move on to the next slide. So since the onset of the pandemic, over 20,000 evictions have been filed in Miami-Dade County alone. And so this is extremely important because sometimes we'll hear folks mention the moratoriums that were in place. And it's very important for us to understand those moratoriums never completely stopped the eviction process. Even in the height of the pandemic, again, while we're trying to take care of loved ones and stay alive, right? Landlords were still filing evictions in the court system. And so this is extremely important, right? 1 in every 20 renters in Black neighborhoods in Miami-Dade County have faced an eviction during the pandemic. And something else that we brought up, especially because so many of our members and the leaders of the tenants movement in Miami are mothers and Black mothers. It's, something that we really want to make sure everyone knows is what we have found is that the number one factor that determines whether or not someone is going to face an eviction is actually living with children. And so truly the face of the evictions crisis in Miami are actually Black and Latina single mothers living with their children, just trying to keep a roof over their heads, right? And rent is up 50+% in Miami in the last year. It is completely outrageous and out of control and what we call abusive, right? Certainly all of us have the right to live in prosperity, to make the money that we need to take care of ourselves and our families. But what we're seeing in the rental market in Miami is abuse. And we need to call that out, right?
Interpretation, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Thank you for that note, Deborah. And thank you also for just all the care and consideration in this conversation. Really appreciate it. So in really addressing and uplifting the particular issues faced by our sisters and brothers living with disabilities in our community, we're really seeing even higher rates of poverty and displacement, just as Fred named, right? That this is also a crisis that we have found to be very invisibilized. This isn't really getting the news reports that we believe it deserves in terms of the connection between those living with disabilities and those forced into homelessness. And as Melissa is even naming in the chat, accommodations that should be the law, that again, our sisters and brothers are not being able to access the accommodations that they need and deserve. And that's leaving them in really uninhabitable conditions, even as they're paying the rent to the best of their ability, right? So this is some of the aspects of the crisis that we're really seeing in Miami, and a fundamental lack of tenant protections. So we can move on to the next slide. So this is something that, again, for those who are invested in the movement for disability justice and the rights of those living with disabilities, is the concept of self-determination. So we believe that our communities actually have quite a few answers. We believe the people in our communities are brilliant, but we really need to make sure that they have a seat at the table. So in the city of Miami alone, 70% of the people living in the city of Miami are renters. We understand that Miami-Dade County is soon to be a majority renter county. And yet most of the laws being passed in terms of developments, in terms of protections, don't really seem to be attending to the needs of the majority in our community. And we think that's a problem. And so for us, it's really important that we're bringing renters together to really advocate for ourselves and our families about the protections that we want to see in our communities. We can move on to the next slide. So the Tenant Bill of Rights campaign is certainly not the end-all be-all of protecting renters in Miami, but we believe it's an important first step. And so this campaign was really built by renters speaking from their own experience of potentially being forced out of their homes during the height of the pandemic. So in going out and knocking on people's doors and talking to tenants, particularly those at high risk of eviction, and asking the question, what are protections that you want to see added in Miami-Dade County? And that's really what gave birth to the Miami Tenant Bill of Rights campaign that we continue to fight for. And so these are some of the new protections that would be added if the Miami Tenant Bill of Rights was passed into law. And so currently, so many renters in our communities are not aware of their rights. We have heard many reports of community members being exploited and taken advantage of, sometimes being lied to, unfortunately, and not knowing their rights or how to defend themselves. And so one of the most important components of the Tenant Bill of Rights is that it would mandate that landlords do have to give notice to tenants of their rights and of the law. It would also officially create a new office that our members and renters across Miami advocated for, called the Office of Housing Advocacy. So renters have a central office that they can go to when they feel that their rights are being violated, and when they have questions about their protections and how to stay housed. Another thing that's very important is that currently in Miami, so many buildings are changing ownership to the point where many tenants we speak to don't even know who their landlord is anymore. And so this would double the notice period that tenants are required to receive when a building changes ownership that might force themselves and their families out of their homes. This right to deduct repairs costs actually comes from one of our members, Mr. Watley, who is himself living with a disability, is a veteran, and has not been able to take a shower in his home in years without the bathroom flooding. And one day he got fed up and decided to start deducting some repairs costs from his rent because the landlord refused to make repairs. So this would officially make it law that if your landlord refuses to fix what is their legal duty to fix, you can deduct those repair costs from your rental payment. And then finally, it would create a fees structure and legal accountability if landlords violate the law and violate protections, that the tenant can then find some recourse, and if necessary, even take their landlord to court as consequences, right, for violating the law. And this is, again, a way to increase protections for tenants and keep our people housed and reduce displacement. And so I think we have a couple more slides, but really want to wrap up because I want to respect other speakers' time. Is, for us, we really, really do believe in building community power. Again, like you see in the chat, folks like Melissa and Fred already have so much knowledge. And so how can we create strong organizations where tenants can exercise their rights? and also make sure that, our elected leaders are really paying attention to what's happening in our communities and the demands that tenants are making to improve our conditions, our housing conditions. And so in addition to the Tenant Bill of Rights, we have a few other demands this year. One, we actually already had some success with. So now the notice period before a rent increase goes into effect has been doubled from 30 days to 60 days. So giving people a little bit more time, not enough time, but a little bit more time than before. We also are advocating for right to counsel. So if you as a landlord want to take your tenant to court, that tenant should have access to free legal representation to be able to defend themselves in court and to fight to stay housed. And so this is an intervention that's been won in many other places around the country, and we hope that Miami will be next. Only 2% of tenants in eviction court currently in Miami-Dade County have access to legal representation. So we really want to see that number increase. And then we also want to win a cap on rental application fees. Currently, tenants are being charged hundreds of dollars just to apply to be considered for an apartment. So again, we think that's price gouging. We think that's really not respectful of our community members and our neighbors. And so we really want to see a cap on that. In New York City, for example, rental application fees are capped at $20. So again, we think it's possible. And these are some of the interventions that we're advocating for, and we welcome all of you to participate in them. And last thing I'll name is on Thursday, April 14th, there will be a public hearing at the Board of County Commission on the Tenant Bill of Rights. We encourage all of you who want to participate to join, make a public comment if you feel called to, and we'd love to have you there. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. I'm just flipping through. You have our commissioners right on here that people could reach out to in their local area. And then these are all the organizations that are already supporting this Tenant Bill of Rights, right? And I know that the list is growing every day, right? As you get more support. Thank you so much, Zaina. Zaina has to leave in a few minutes. She has another meeting today, but she was kind enough to jump into this and present today. But if you have questions, we can gather them and send them to her and get answers and email you the answers. But Zaina, thank you so much for sharing this information with us today and joining us today. So she gave us a lot of information, and it's not all good information, right? It's pretty bad information. So we're going to bring Besa back to reset our nervous system and mindfulness. Besa, I'm going to give you a few minutes to help us. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaina from Miami Workers Center. And thank you, Fred Christian, for your advocacy, your activism, and bringing awareness to the current conditions where suffering and systemic abuse is being allowed to happen. And we are here together in community to see how we can affect that change. Compassion is not a feeling, it is an adaptive process in relation to our lived experience in the moment. So let us engage in resetting our nervous systems. Let us take 3 cleansing breaths, inhaling through the nose and exhaling completely out of the mouth. Inhaling again through your nose and exhaling completely out of your mouth. And taking a moment with this next breath to drop into your body. And then make an intention to notice your experience in the body. I want you to localize where you feel any tension in your body right now. And do a mental awareness to release that tension. Now I want you to notice how you are feeling in this moment. What thoughts are arising? And now I'm going to invite you, we're going to remove some tension from our face and our heads because we store a lot when we have to deal with problems and stress. And so as you're able, you can either massage your scalp. If you want to do this without using your hands, you may just set the intention of releasing tension in your scalp. And then as you are able, moving to release tension in your face, wherever you feel tension. And you can either do this by placing your hands in circular motions, moving your face, or with the intention of noticing what is happening with your face, relaxing it internally. And do it around your eyes, where we hold a lot of tension in our temples. And so now I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to actively take in. And if it feels comfortable for you to either put your hands over your heart or feel a connection to the area of your heart, I want you to listen to the following. May I be well, loving, and peaceful. May all beings be well, loving, and peaceful. May I be at ease in my body, feeling the ground beneath my seat and feet, feeling my back, enjoying breath as it rises and falls and rises. May I know and be intimate with body and mind, whatever its feeling or mood, calm or agitated, tired or energetic, irritated or friendly. As we breathe in and out, aware moment by moment of the risings and passings. May I be attentive and gentle towards my own discomfort and suffering. May I be attentive and grateful for my own joy and well-being. May I move towards others freely and with openness. May I receive others with sympathy and understanding. May I move towards the suffering of others with peaceful and attentive confidence. May I continually cultivate the ground of peace for myself and others and persist mindful and dedicated to this work, independent of results. May I know that my peace and the world's peace are not separate, that our peace in the world is the result of our work for justice and equity and inclusion. May all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. Now take a moment to reflect and observe what has come up for you. It could be a physical sensation, a memory, an emotion, or a thought. And using no judgment, just notice what came up. And then take a breath and feel yourself sitting in your chair and back in the room together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Besa. Okay, Janice, now we're going to start with you, and we're going to hear what our community is doing to fully integrate and include people with disabilities. And if you don't mind turning on your camera so that the language interpreters, it's helpful for them. And I'll let you take over. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Before I get started, I just want to know if I am speaking slowly enough for the interpreters before I begin. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, excuse me. My name is Janice Davis, and I am the Age Friendly and Health Equity Manager at Urban Health Partnerships. And I am here today to talk about the Miami-Dade Age Friendly Initiative and how we are working to make Miami-Dade a community that is more inclusive for all adults, especially older adults. A little bit about the Miami-Dade Age Friendly Initiative. We are a collaborative effort that is intended to create a community where older adults can stay active, engage, and age in place with dignity. We recognize that across Florida and across the US, our older adult population is growing. Currently, right now, Miami-Dade has the largest amount of individuals ages 60 and over in the state. We have over 500,000. And that's expected to increase to 800,000 by 2040. And we recognize that our cities were not designed to accommodate for both the aging population in terms of the number of people and how old our adults are living to remain these days. And so we are working to maintain sustainable change to make sure that individuals of all ages and abilities can enjoy life with the quality of life that they deserve. Next slide, please. We are overseen by 8 lead agencies. They are here. They are AARP of Florida, the Alliance for Asian, the Health Foundation of South Florida, the Florida Department of Health in Miami-Dade County, Miami-Dade County Office of the Mayor, Miami-Dade TPO, United Way of Miami-Dade, and my organization, Urban Health Partnerships. Next slide, please. So Age Friendly operates off of what we call 8 domains of livability. And today I am going to talk about the housing domain. And that domain focuses on ensuring that anyone can age in place in their current home if they choose to do so. This is only made possible if we both have policies and programs in place to make sure our homes are adequately designed to allow people to age in place, and that we also provide affordable housing for people of all ages. Next slide, please. We have 13 municipalities in Miami-Dade who have signed on to be age-friendly municipalities. The newest one is Healthy West Kendall, which actually is unincorporated. It's a health district, and it's actually the first health district in the country to make a commitment to ensuring that our older adults and individuals with disabilities can maintain dignity while living in the Healthy West Kendall service area. Next slide, please. And just briefly before we begin going over into aging in place, I want to talk to you about some of the things we have accomplished here with the Miami-Dade Age Friendly Initiative. We have given over 15 mini grants, which have helped launch age-friendly projects that address 7 out of the 8 domains. These projects have impacted an estimated 65,000 individuals. Most of the projects focus on either development of ADA buildings and facilities for community centers or technology for older adults. We've also developed an age-friendly action plan for Miami-Dade, where we had 3 priority areas identified: the built environment, outdoor spaces, transportation, and housing. So we are committed here in Miami-Dade to ensure that we are focusing on housing policies to make sure everyone can age in place. We've also had surveys where we gathered data from over 2,000 older adults to help inform our future efforts. Next slide, please. So regarding aging in place, next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, aging in place allows an individual to remain in their current home should they desire to. Oftentimes, the way homes are designed, they do not accommodate for individuals of older age or disabilities, and they have to move to an assisted living facility to accommodate their needs. And we are working here in Miami-Dade to ensure that a person can age in place in their current home. One of the main things we're looking at doing right now is what's called universal design. It's also known as barrier-free design in some communities, but universal design makes sure that a house is designed to be safe and accessible for anyone regardless of age, physical ability, and stature. Now, oftentimes when people think of universal design, we think of simple things such as inclusion of wheelchair ramps or handrails, but that is just part of the issue. Things such as ensuring that the doors are wider, hallways are wider, things that I learned, such as using pulls on doors and cabinets instead of drawers, because not everyone, especially if you have arthritis, can easily grab or turn a doorknob. Making sure you have contrasting edge band countertops to make sure that someone who has failing eyesight or vision issues can see the edge of a countertop. Looking at having cabinets in varying heights to make sure that individuals of all ability levels can reach the cabinets to get what they need. Having flexible appliances, such as having under-the-counter refrigerators. We sometimes see this if a home decides to put in a mini fridge for the beverages. That is also a universal design feature. Having the dishwasher elevated to accommodate individuals who are in wheelchairs and they cannot bend over easily is also another factor of universal design. There are communities such as Sarasota County, which already has policies in place. And what we're working to do is we've been meeting with the county since last October. And what we're trying to do is work on having the bid system designed so that way those builders, because as it was mentioned previously, we have so many new developments, both single family homes and multi-unit buildings being built, have those builders and contractors who have universal design features incorporated into their project design given priority to ensure that our older adults and our individuals with disabilities can live in their homes with accessibility. We're also looking at this from a transportation standpoint as well. As we know that public transportation needs to be designed to ensure that all individuals of all ability levels can take transit. Not everyone has access to a car here in Miami-Dade. The bus system is very extensively used. And one thing that we have done previously in Little Havana is we created benches because we realized a lot of bus stops did not have seating areas for individuals to sit, which is an issue if you have mobility issues. And we also made sure they were placed near shading because we don't realize that the heat in Miami it takes a toll, especially if you are older, and to have shade not only provides comfort, but it's also a safety issue. So we've been working to include more benches to accommodate those who are disabled and older, as well as shading to protect individuals from heat stroke during the summertime. Next slide, please. So what are we doing to address this? Last year, we did an age-friendly housing policy scan, and this actually can be found on our website. I will send the link to Deborah after the presentation, and you can view this document. It actually scans the housing policies across Miami-Dade County to show which ones have the best practices in accommodating housing issues for older adults and those who have ability issues. We found the best practices of Miami-Dade County and 5 entitlement cities, which are Miami, Hialeah, Miami Beach, Miami Gardens, and North Miami. And it's also included in there an advocacy strategy that can help us advocate for the adoption of these policies throughout the county as well. Next slide, please. There's also, as I mentioned, transportation needed to be included. the TPO, which is one of our lead agencies, did what's called an age and road user safety plan. And what this safety plan does is it helps to figure out how are individuals informed of our resources for transportation, how to ensure that there's a variety of transportation modes available for those who are older, how we can advocate and implement streets that are safe for all users, because we found that there are some intersections where more older adults and disabled adults live tend to have higher rates of accidents. So how can we design the streets to be safer? And they also did what is called a safety road audit as well. And it received a best practice from AARP, but it did look at the crash patterns of, I think it was 140 older adults on residential housing. And they looked at what kinds of crashes occurred for individuals who were either auto users, pedestrians, or bicyclists, ages 65 and older. And we're now working to see how can we redesign the streets and what safety precautions, need to be implemented to ensure that we reduce traffic accidents in these areas. And lastly, we've also developed age-friendly parks toolkit. I'm not sure if you know, but we do have 9 parks that are county parks that have been designated as age-friendly parks, where they are designed to ensure individuals of all mobility and ability levels and ages can enjoy the parks freely and without any assistance. And we also have at these age-friendly parks, not only do we have equipment that is ability and accessibility friendly, we also do offer various classes and fitness and physical activity options at these parks as well. And I think, okay, so opportunities to get involved. We do have several ways to get involved with our organization. One thing, we have a newsletter that goes out every quarter. I'm sorry, next slide, please. We have an age-friendly newsletter that comes out every quarter where we highlight various important issues. I believe this quarter, the newsletter will be released in April, and we have a high focus on housing. So if you have any articles or any upcoming events you want included in our age-friendly newsletter, please let me know. We have the advisory committee meeting it's actually scheduled for March 29th, next week. I can send that information as well. And we do have several work groups. We have an older adult advisory committee, and that is our residents board, where we have older adults from across the county provide their input and feedback into what policies should we be focusing on, how do we focus on our policies, and how can we engage older adults to be more active in our community design. We also have the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, which is a group of approximately 60 individuals. We meet quarterly to discuss upcoming issues. And one issue that we are really working on right now, in addition to universal design for housing, we're actually working on developing the first age-friendly library certification program. So we're really excited to have our libraries be certified age-friendly, which encompasses all ability levels. And thank you so much for allowing me to present to you today. I do see that I had a couple of questions in the chat, so I will respond to them in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Do the questions seem like there's something everybody would want to hear the answers of, or they're specific and because I can't see the chat, so I don't know.
There was one, okay, can we retrofit buildings built from the 1980s to 1990s? And I do believe that we can. I can talk to Jorge, who works with the Miami-Dade County's housing, to better get the exact answer for that. And there was a question also from Fred about bus benches that need to be covered and have cutouts for people in chairs to roll into. That is correct. With regards to the bus benches being covered, we have tried to work on that in some of the municipalities. I do know the ones in Little Havana they have natural covering from the trees. So they do have some shading. I know it's not full protection from when it rains, but we do agree that full bus shelters is what we call them. If it's a 3-walled structure, are the best choice, especially for the protection against the elements. And I would be more than happy to send my newsletter to everyone in this chat who's requested.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic information. I'm so glad you were here today to share it with us. Now, the next topic, emergency management, we could do a whole 2-hour training on emergency management, hurricanes, COVID-19, and people with disabilities. But I'm going to spend a few minutes on it today because I just don't think you can talk about housing without talking about what happens to people with disabilities in emergencies. And you heard Fred so eloquently describe to you how someone with a disability needs to be removed from a part of a building if an elevator isn't working. And nobody wants to be in that situation. Or if there's an emergency and they say you have to leave in 5 minutes, 30 minutes, what does that mean to people with disabilities? Just like Fred was saying. And from my organization's point of view, one of the things that we're always trying to educate on is, as you're developing your plans, what is the plan for people with disabilities? We need to stop having people with disabilities be an afterthought to a plan, but be part of the plan as it's being developed. Okay, if an emergency happens, these are the 5 things that are going to happen. And we've already taken into account where people with disabilities fit into that plan. And unfortunately, that's not what traditionally or usually happens in our community. I mean, if you look at COVID, my organization was constantly, every time we heard something on the news, we'd be calling, we'd be emailing, what about people with disabilities? What do you mean? Only way you can get a test is to drive through somewhere. What if someone can't drive? What if they don't have a car? What is the accommodation process? And then everyone's like, oh no, give us some time. We'll figure it out. And we're like saying, no, that is not the way this needs to be done. You should figure it out before you release the plan. Okay, here's the plan. And if you're a person with a disability, here is the way that you can also get the same service and not be an afterthought. And we saw this throughout at every stage of COVID. There was a lack of planning for integration of people with disabilities into the plan. Whether it was City of Miami giving out gift cards because people needed money to get groceries. Okay, well, you had to wait in line. Okay, well, if you were a person with a disability, either you had no way to get to the line or you couldn't stand and you couldn't wait. You just didn't have that as an option. So, as I said, every step of the process, someone had to call and say, what about people with disabilities? And then, oh, okay, let's figure out a way so that they can be served too. You see this in hurricanes all the time. In Hurricane Irma, there was a story, and Mark and interpreters, you will appreciate this. They actually did a New York Times article about it. In hurricane, when you watch emergency management, a lot of times you'll see an interpreter on the side of the screen or in a little box when a public official or government official is speaking. One issue is a lot of the governments have the interpreter, but the TV station cuts off the interpreter, and they call it "don't crop the interpreter," because it's all fine and good to have it, but if it doesn't make it onto the TV, then people that are deaf or need the sign languages interpreters are not getting the information. Especially in emergency, this is a problem. But during Hurricane Irma in Manatee County, they did a news report and they brought in an unqualified interpreter. So the interpreter was signing pizza instead of emergency and signing bear monster. So you've got this Hurricane Irma, which kept changing directions and no one knew where it was going. You've got people on TV, serious faces giving important information, yet they had an unqualified interpreter giving out really confusing, bad information. So once again, they got to think from the beginning. Do I have an interpreter? Great, but are they qualified? Is it going to make it onto the TV screen? Things that should be thought of in advance and not an afterthought when people complain because they weren't given the safety information that they need. So here's part of housing and part of what we're talking to you today. And a lot of people that are on this webinar work in organizations. As you do things, think from step one, how what you're doing will impact or include people with disabilities. Because from our perspective, it's much easier to plan something inclusive from the beginning versus trying to add it in later, whether you're in the middle of implementing it and someone calls and complains, or you're trying to fix it after. Part of what we want to do today is share that idea of plan for everybody from the planning stages rather than fix after the fact. So as we bring all of this information together that you have heard over the last almost hour and a half, working with people with disabilities and housing, it's very complex. It's not just, oh, if I do this one thing, everything else is taken care of. No, it's comprehensive, and making sure we find the right housing, and then making sure it's safe, making sure it's accessible, making sure it's located in the community where people have access to public transportation, where they have access to the programs and services within a community is very complex. And when I started, I said, okay, we're going to go beyond the law. Did someone comply? We have to switch the mindset from where we say, did we meet the law, which is really the floor or the minimum amount you have to do, to are we being inclusive and including with people with disabilities into our community so that they have this full in life and experiences like everyone else in the community. And let me give you a couple of examples. So the first example I want to give you is you think of curb cuts in sidewalks. Curb cuts and sidewalks were originally made so that people with disabilities can use the sidewalks, but now everybody wants them. And when they're not in a certain community, you miss them. So that is something that was done for one purpose that really has benefited everyone. And that's something that happens a lot in the disability world. When you make something accessible for people with disabilities, you've made it better or more usable for everybody. Another example, crosswalks. There's something called audible crosswalks, and an audible crosswalk is when the crosswalk actually will have sound or talk to you, so that if someone is blind or has a visual impairment, they will be able to know when it's safe to cross the street. We as a community need to advocate for more of those type of crosswalks, because it'll help even people, right? You're on your cell phone all the time, you're not paying attention, we're so distracted. Having the input in different forms, the lights, the sound, benefits everyone. And let me give you a last one that circles back to housing. In order to integrate people with disabilities that have intellectual developmental disabilities into the community, we might be able to have rules that let 3 unrelated people live together in an apartment, so that people with intellectual disabilities can have a caregiver maybe living with them, so that they can be in the community and that they don't have to go into a group home separated in order to stay within the confines of the law. Maybe this is a better way of looking at that law, or that they can live in an apartment in a big building with all types of people, so that they don't once again have to be removed from the community in order to live in a group home. So something to think about in terms of housing. There's lots of ways where we can adjust the way the rules are now to make sure that people live integrated in the community and don't have to be put into more restrictive housing in order to be able to live. And so something to think about as we finish up today. I want to open it up to questions, and then we're going to introduce all of the partners that helped make this happen today and talk about things that are going to be happening in the community. And then we're going to finish with a questionnaire. So if you have a question, you can put it in the chat. Sharon, you can read it out, or just turn on your camera and ask a question and we'll try to get you an answer.
Debbie, there aren't many questions, but there's a lot of folks commenting on agreeing with the things that have been said today and how making sure that things are accessible and contact understanding and accessing emergency services is so important.
Well, I'm
Well-
just able, well, where I live at, I'm on the second floor. And sometime I'll be about to fall and I'll be afraid of falling down them stairs. And so I have to grip onto the railings to keep from falling, especially when it rains. It's very slippery when it rains. And the parking lot floods when it rained. And he did have someone to take some of that stuff out the sewer system, but it still floods when it rained, especially during hurricane time. And I spoke about this to the county and to the building code inspectors and the Section 8 office, but he still allowed people to put trash in that sewer system, throw trash in the building, and I still have a hard time with getting him to understand. Now he's angry with me about what's going on, about what I said to the commissioners during the commission meeting we went to, I believe it was last week. And now he has an attitude with me because the police and the public service aide came around here like 2 days after the meeting last week, or the week before. And now I don't know what's going to happen after that. And I need to know what to do next because I've done everything I can for the last 3 years.
Yeah, I can hear the frustration in your voice, Melissa. I believe Zaina said she knows you and you work with her organization. Is that correct, Melissa?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so they're probably the best place to continue to work with you and help you. It sounds like you're doing the right stuff. You're going to the officials, you're telling your story, you're reporting it. So I think if you keep working with Zaina's organization, that's probably your best way to help make sure that you get what you need done.
And I also been writing to some of these home health aid programs and organizations, which they haven't been to my apartment in like 6 months to see about me, but I still try my best to get out letters. I'll be writing at least up to 60 letters a month trying to get help, and some are not answering me. I go to Catholic Charities. I go to some of everything you can think of, to the county. I email commissions over and over again. I even went to the county manager, the mayor, quite a few times in the past year, and to a county attorney, which she did answer to me, but I can't remember what she said because it's been about 4 months. And I'm still writing this and going through a lot, trying to figure out what to do. I even wrote letters to the newspapers and to the news station.
Yeah, it sounds, Melissa, like you're a fierce advocate. The one last piece that I would tell you is your power to vote. And my organization does a lot with voting and making sure that people with disabilities have access to vote and understand what they're voting on. But that to me is your superpower, is your ability to vote, and only vote for people that listen to you and support things that and issues that are important to people with disabilities. That would be my last piece of advice to you. And I see that Anna Maria has her hand up. Anna, you want to add something to the conversation?
Yes. Hi. I'm a neurodivergent disabled person, and I'm I'm still coming off a little bit of stress, not just from the meeting, but from earlier today. I had a water and sewer person come tell me that they were going to cut my water, and I was like, what? Because I had worked with the social services department to help me to resolve that, and it still wasn't. So there's a lot of clarity issues that come along. I know everybody involved in every step of the way wants to help, because that's usually, I imagine, why they end up in these jobs. But sometimes they don't realize that some of us need more information in a way that they're not able to give it to us. Like, I'll explain what's going on and I'll get 311 or whoever on the line, and they don't know how to direct me to somebody who can help accommodate my request, who can help explain it more specifically, because because I'm autistic and ADHD and I have anxiety, or they don't have a text only option. It's really frustrating. And then I try to be resourceful and find different ways to do it, but then everything has 75 different forms that they want you to fill out, and then it becomes very overwhelming. And once you're a person with anxiety, of course, overwhelming things kind of shut you down, and it becomes very hard to get things done because everything feels like it's so big and so impossible. And then there's nobody who understands that can be your guiding voice to, hey, okay, this is how you do this, or okay, I can help you with that, or this is what you have to do. There's no direction. So it becomes
Yeah, and that's exactly what our third training is going to be about in May. Exactly what you're describing. We're going to spend the whole 2 hours on that issue in May. Is how can we effectively communicate with government agencies and public agencies for people with disabilities, and where are these barriers? Exactly what you just said is what our whole training is going to be about in May. So hopefully you come back to that one and maybe we can have an answer for you or some suggestions. Fred, I saw your hand up also.
Yes, thank you, Debbie. I forgot to add in my presentation, I'm not sure if you guys can see me on the camera or not, and I apologize for turning it off for the interpreters. But I forgot to add, we need one thing in the communities that's well-lit communities. Where I live is pretty good, but it could be where it's mostly seniors and some disabled, but it could be even better. We have to have better lighting for people, not just the sight impaired, but the people in the chairs too, because and the people like me that have tracking disorders. The brighter it is, the safer it is, but also the brighter it is, it's more accessible for people at nighttime too. We're not going to bump into things. We're not going to trip. We're not going to fall. We're not going to miss the cutout. In other words, we have lighting. It's going to be safer and safer in all ways for us too. I forgot to add that earlier. And I also forgot to add a point in my presentation about mold being in many of these buildings too.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything that you said, and I'm sure that Janice would agree from her perspective and what her organization is doing also. Anybody else have a comment or a question before we move on?
Debbie, there's a comment in the chat box from Lisette Perez. Do you want me to read it?
Yes, I can't see any of the chat with my screen shared.
Or Lisette, do you want to read it and ask it?
Just said, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Hi, everybody. I just said that unfortunately, I'm a family navigator and I'm working with individuals with disabilities. Unfortunately, there's a lot to be done, and the frustration and the waiting for the families can be so expensive and so overwhelmed that I believe that the housing agencies need to meet at some point and create like a system for the families. I mean, like, instead of working separately, seeing how, the cases can be taken, and consider the cases. So to me, the work needs to be more, those agencies could benefit, I believe, or the families could benefit if the agencies get together and they have like a track system. Cases that really need to be assessed, cases that really need to be taken in consideration, and how we can create a system, to facilitate that if families, instead of waiting 2, 3, 4, 5 years, they could take much more less time, in order to solve their situation. I don't
Yeah,
know
I
if
think
that
I
can be
think
done.
I think that's a great point, and I don't think Zaina is on anymore, but that is in one of the points that they're working with at her organization. And part of that would happen with this Office of Housing Advocacy, where there would be one place where everyone can go and be able to put in the complaints, and then that office would be able to see patterns and trends and recognize some of the things that you're describing. So I think everyone, probably especially on that are here today, would agree with you on that. And I think that's one of the things that the Miami Workers Center is trying to advocate for and work on. Absolutely. So thank you for that comment. I'm gonna let everyone hear about our partners and hear from them. But first I want to point out our logo. If you've been following us since we started, we never had a logo or anything. So this year we actually developed a logo for the project, and it's super cool. So I put it on the slide so you could see it, and we're very proud of it. And as you can see there, this is not just one group working on this. This is a community-wide collaborative venture that we all have been, these partners have been working on for several years. I'm gonna Camilo's working as an interpreter and on the training. Camilo, I don't know if you have the ability to introduce your organization or give a little topic about it, because you're the lead agency and you guys write the grants to make this all happen.
Yes, David, yes. We are I'm in communication with the other interpreter, so I can go ahead and to say a few words. First of all, thank you, and thank you to everyone who is here today. The Enable project has been around for a while, but we did take a little bit of a break after our programming following the COVID pandemic, which we're still in. But we wanted to wait a little longer to get the program started this year, because we didn't want to start at a time when people had already taken off for vacation and holidays and things like that. But Debbie has done a really great job at letting you know what's coming up next. We want to let you know also that we're going to be making all the materials and all the presentations and the videos accessible, and we're going to post them publicly so that everyone can go back to them and share them and learn a new skill. And we're going to also consolidate them all into our LinkedIn page so that people, as they learn new skills, they can get endorsements from Enable project partners and then keep on building their skills. Also, our partners from the Center for Independent Living will talk a little bit about some of the other programs that we have going on as well. And lastly, no, I think that's all that we have right now. Oh yeah, one thing, we're going to be providing a link for an evaluation. These evaluations are really, really important because they help us understand how you are perceiving the trainings, and if there's anything that we could do better, or if there's a subject that you would like us to talk about and bring experts, we'll be very happy to be responsive to your input. So we're going to put that link in the chat so that you all can take that evaluation and help us with the programming. And that's all I have for Catalyst. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Allison, are you speaking for the Center for Independent Living?
Yes, I will be. So thank you everybody who presented today. This is such important information, and we at CIL are so proud to be a part of the Enable project. So for those of you who are not familiar with our organization, we provide free services to those with disabilities in the community. We serve all disabilities, both visible and non-visible, and all ages. A few of our services include information referral, independent living skills. We also have interpreting solutions. So our American Sign Language interpreters today, our team works with them to coordinate their presence at events such as this, both virtual and in person. And we have a few exciting events coming up. We will be participating in Radical Partners 10 Days of Connection, which is from May 1st to May 10th. So we're going to be hosting an experience with Mind and Melody, which is a music nonprofit that brings musical experiences to those with Alzheimer's and all different abilities as well. So we encourage you to keep a lookout for that. I will also put our calendar of events link in the chat box, and I encourage you guys to visit that, and you can see all the other social events that we provide to the community. We have a youth department that's always hosting social events that are virtual for the time being. And then we also have our Deaf Services department, where we have Definitely an Awesome Time, DAT, and that's virtual as well for the time being. And so I will put that link in right now. And yeah, so thank you guys for participating today. And thank you, Debbie, for the spotlight.
Absolutely. Now, our next organization is called Advocacy Network on Disabilities. The shouldn't be there, and I left off on disabilities. So that is totally on me, and I apologize, and we will have it fixed for the next presentation, but I will let Irie Diaz explain to you what Advocacy Network on Disabilities does.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you everybody that presented and everybody that's here. And don't worry, we just changed the logo and dropped the not long ago. So no big deal. We've been known by many names. Some of you may know us as CCDH. And so we are, that's our legal name, and we do business as Advocacy Network on Disabilities. We provide services to individual people, and we provide professional development services to programs that after school and summer programs that provide to include kids with disabilities and make sure that kids with disabilities and individuals with disabilities are included in the community in all aspects of community living in meaningful ways. And so we have a wide range of services and grants from different organizations. Some of the services we provide are respite care, emergency financial assistance to adults with developmental disabilities and children with any disability, as well as counseling, education, parenting training, and psychoeducational trainings. Thank you, and I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you so much. Every now and then you'll hear the dog barking. That's my dog, Lucy. She comes to work every day at our organization, and she lets us know when someone is at the door. That's why you occasionally heard some barking. And last, we have our Enable Project Advisors, and this is new this year. Catalyst decided that it would be great to widen our partnership and add more partners into the mix. And so 2 of them you've met already. One is Fred, who you heard speak today. Also Besa, who did our guiding activities. And our third is Mark McGuire, who you might have seen him on the screen. And he is so the 3 advisors have been added to our team this year, and they're gonna help guide the work and evaluate our work and help us decide what we want to do moving forward. But all 3 of them were instrumental in what information I presented today, and we see them as a great addition to our team and our partners. So Fred, thank you. Besa, thank you. And Mark, thank you. You're going to hear Mark talk and present on one of the other trainings, and so everybody's getting incorporated as we grow this project from an idea to what we have done today. As you heard people talking, I made a calendar of events. I have the next trainings. I added the public hearing on April 14th that Zaina told you about, and I added the link to the Center for Independent Living's calendar of events that Allison was telling you about. So things to look forward to. Also, I put in the 10 days of connection, which is done by Radical Partners, coordinates it, but if you don't know about it, it's an amazing event in our community that takes place May 1st through May 10th. And there'll be a calendar of events, and 70 different organizations are going to be involved in it. And it's going to be very exciting. So if you want to keep learning and learn about things that are out of your comfort zone, I suggest you look at the 10 days of connection. As Camila was telling you, we are trying to centralize the materials because we've made a lot of interesting materials over the years. We're going to put them through our LinkedIn page, which we've created, an Enable project page, but also on my organization's website, justdigit.org. We have a resource page, and we've put it by year: Enable Project 2020, Enable Project 2021, Enable Project 2022. What you'll find right now are accessible PDFs of the slides, the presentations themselves, and we will be also putting YouTube links to the videos so that you can see the slides in the video one after each other, all in one comprehensive place. Once DIG gets them up, all the other organizations and the partners will be able to put them. So you're going to be able to get them through multiple places, but we'll have everything kind of organized for you so that if you missed something or didn't hear the trainings last year or want to hear something again, they'll all be in one place for you to find them and review them. And then lastly, as Camilo told you, we're trying to do a survey and get feedback. There's a link that everybody's putting in the chat, but you can also put your cell phone or your iPad to the screen on the QR code, and it should take you to the survey as well. And I want to give us a few minutes to be able to fill out the survey. It's very short. You pick the questions you want to answer. We made it as usable as possible, and you'll notice we are looking for all types of accessibility. So you'll see some of the questions you're going to answer by using stars instead of words. Another form of accessibility we're working on. So I'm going to be quiet for a few minutes and let everybody fill out the survey.